welcome. Today, watercolorist Regine Petrosky is here to speak of her art. Tell us a little bit, Regine. When did you first discover that you like to paint?
Well, actually, growing up, that's one of the things we did as children, you know, how you color and how you draw and you do things. So through the years, my mom pushed me into doing more of it because she thought I was pretty good at it. And then again, my teachers also thought that this child has talent. And I did it, and I was a very good student, so I did it to please Mom, and I did it to please the teachers, but my interests were elsewhere.
Wow.
So through the years, art was always in my life, but not my prime interest. I had other interests.
Yeah, I was surprised when you were telling me about that because I just think of you as a natural artist. You seem so free when you paint. So I've watched you paint in class and seen your work even before I took the class and really admired the freeness to your painting.
Well, basically, it's a form of expression, and whether we realize it or not, we do that anyway. We express ourselves sometimes in how we put ourselves together, clothed with clothing or wardrobe, or our homes, how we decorate our home. And art is just another way, and I enjoy it. When I was a young teenager, about 14, 15, I drew and painted a lot of horses.
Oh,
and I guess most girls are interested in horses at that time.
Yeah, interested in horses then. But not all of us can paint them, you know. How was it that it came about that you ended up teaching painting?
Well, after raising my family and after school and after having other ambitions, I had an automobile accident.
Okay.
And I was in an awful lot of pain. I really was a basket case. But I was, there's something, I may be very free in my painting, but I'm very stubborn in other areas. I wouldn't take the pain pills. I wouldn't take the medication. And at one point I was in Sunnyview in Schenectady, and the doctor there was very pleased that I was not dependent on medication and had also supported me in the things I did do, like I walked a lot, and I found other outlets, and painting was my mainstay at the time to get my mind away from the pain.
Wow.
And actually the doctors say there is the pain center is very close in your head next to the creative center, so if you're focusing on something creative or something you enjoy doing, that your mind gets off the pain. So I took classes at Columbia Green Community College in Columbia County. I live in Greene County, so I'd cross the bridge and go to class, and it was really nice, and I liked it. And maybe it's the first time I was doing something for myself. You know how your wife and mother and going to work and everything. So I took these classes, and my instructor, who was very, very supportive, encouraged me to have a show. But long before having a show there, after class I would come home, I'd be so excited, and I would paint and paint like the whole night, and sometimes for a couple of days, you know, till I had to go to class, went to class again the next week. And I became quite prolific, and I think I'm from Germany, and I was kind of raised, you will do it again and again till you get it right. Okay. So, and it's not that I was not getting it right, but until I was happy with what I was doing, so I really would paint something over and over again.
Oh, okay. Well, I know you really inspired me to paint and really gave me the encouragement to, you know, continue with my painting, even though it was something I had always enjoyed and always had done and had taken in school. But I think after studying with you, it really prompted me to constantly pursue it. And I did my homework, and I'd bring you in.
And you did.
New paintings and everything. So I think you gave back to probably many people what you received then from that teacher to give you that encouragement. I understand you've shown at the Bethlehem Public Library.
Yes, I have.
And you show all around, I think, the Hudson Valley
as
area.
much as I can, and many things. I'm kind of lucky, like you invited me here many times. I'm invited to show somewhere, and I think that also encourages you and gives you a little pat on the back. and it's nice. But you also know from my classroom that, and I tell my students, painting is something you do for yourself. It's rather personal, and because it's a creative endeavor, but it also lets you do something that you maybe have never done before.
Well, I know what really spurred me to take the class was just wanting to really do something I had wanted to do for a long time. And I had studied painting prior to your class, but not watercolor painting. And I wanted that because I'm sensitive to oil paints. So that's what made me go into the watercolors. And I was always so frustrated because I didn't have the technique down. And so taking the class was I was able to start working on the technique. And what I always liked was your encouragement to be loose and enjoy it and not take it seriously, just to really enjoy painting. And that's what I think that painting should be about for people. That's what art's all about, and not to be so concerned with every single brush stroke. So that's the one thing that I think you put across to people. And I just wonder if how much of your European background affected what you're doing today, or how the studies or painting might have been different from as a European child to an American child.
Well, in Europe, and I've been away for quite a long time, but in Europe, basically you study much harder and more technically correct than in America.
Okay.
But your attitude is different. Europeans are a little more freer and looser. Once you master the basics, and that's why sometimes in my class I always have a lesson in my class. Those are the basics, like when we mix the colors from the primary colors, and when we see what the brush will do, and we address specifics. You need your fundamentals. And then you can let loose. And most people with watercolor are afraid and they're uptight, and there's no need for it. So I encourage my students to just splash and play with it.
That's nice.
And sometimes it doesn't come out right, splash. And this is where a young man up at Hunter Mountain, Hunter Mountain used to have a gallery. And I was asked to work with children up there, and I was asked to do demonstrations and so on. I even did one here at Bethlehem with the Bethlehem Art Association. And I did a demonstration at Twilight Park up the mountain. But this young man, he comes over and he says to me, "What, are you, an alchemist?" And I says, "What's that?" He says, "Well, the way you work." And sometimes I do splash and play and drop in colors and just see what happens. Sometimes you don't have to have a set thing on what you're going to paint. Just put it down and let's see how it runs together. And it really is a little experimentation with this medium. But if you never try it, you really can't see what watercolor does, and that elusiveness of watercolor, and the transparency, and the happy accidents. If you never let it happen, if you take that little brush and you noodle and noodle along, you're not going to have it.
Maybe that's the love of science that you have, that you're sharing in your artwork, is all the mixing and creating and seeing what's going to come about.
And I'll take it, sometimes it's so wet, it's dripping wet, and I'll take it. And I've done it with other water medium too. And it's a lot of fun. What
do you especially like to paint? Sorry, excuse me.
Well, I really like to paint everything.
Okay.
But in the classroom, I paint a lot of flowers. I'm also a gardener, so and it's always a good idea to paint something that you know.
Okay.
And this is where, and if you ever like to enjoy an art book, the Zen of painting or the Zen of drawing, become familiar with your subject.
Okay.
If you understand what you're looking at, what you're painting, and also paint from real life, rather than copying a picture.
Oh, okay.
Looking at life, you see it three-dimensionally, you see how the light falls, like let's say even on this plant, and every time you look at it, it's different because it's a different angle. So it's a good idea to paint things that are real, rather than something flat.
What do you recommend for different weight papers, or tube paint versus cake paint, synthetic versus natural brushes?
Well, I'm sort of get away from all that stuff. Most instructors, you have to have this paper, you have to have that paint, you have to have that brush. And I find today the market is unbelievable. I mean, you can spend days shopping for art supplies,
so many.
and you can spend all your money doing it. But the competition is so fierce. Most of the products are very good because of the competition. So you purchase what you can afford, you work with what you're comfortable with, and you start out with just a few little items.
Okay. Now, one thing that you talked about in class is about mixing your own colors, so you're not getting so involved with purchasing every single variation of color, because there are so many that you can purchase. So, Regine, you really got your students used to mixing their own colors, and I felt that was key for me.
Yes.
Because I used to struggle with the purchasing of, well, where's that perfect blue that I wanted, or where's that green that's in between these other two greens? And now I don't rely on, it's not a concern for me anymore.
Exactly.
I'm just like taking what I have, I have my primary colors, and you just get out there and do it. And you certainly mix very well. I mean, you have great, sense of color in what you do. I just thought that was a very encouraging way to teach and to paint.
Well, this is where we again get back to square one, the technical part, the fundamentals. It's just like, on everything, whether you play the piano, whether you learn your math, 1 and 1 is 2, it doesn't change. And with color, if you understand color, you take your primaries and you can mix any color you desire, because those colors in those 172 or 360 tubes that a company may sell, they're mixed from the primary colors. Or there are various blues. So if you, let's say, use a cobalt blue opposed to a turquoise blue, you mix it with a lemon yellow, you get two different results. But also the amount. So again, it's a little chemistry, a little science, and after all, paint is made in a laboratory from natural or synthetic materials. But you can mix your own colors, but you can, and everybody has a different color sense, so you can mix the shade of green or the shade of blue, or in some circles it's called a hue. And in the fashion field, it has fancy names, like mauve or
That's true.
fuchsia. And also the names, and many times I encourage my students to purchase the colors, make a list of it, and put the reds or the blues or the yellows next to each other.
That's a good point.
So that you see different makers, they may call it gamboge, or they may call it, what's the new one, like rose madder, or some of the reds. And the difference from one, provider to another are really, really different.
Oh, okay.
So again, you become familiar with what you purchase, what you're looking at, and then you can mix it and you can do whatever you want with it.
Now, what would be the advantage or disadvantage of student grade paper or paint as opposed to professional grade?
Well, again, what is professional?
Okay.
And again, we're going back to Europe. In Europe, most artists paint on just about any kind of paper, and I do it because it's very interesting what effects and textures and flow of the paints you get on different papers. Now, student grade is a little less expensive, and if you're beginning and you paint a lot, it can become very costly, especially the paper. The paint goes a long way because you mix it with water, and that is the operative word, like I say in class. You got to use water with watercolor. You don't glue it on like an opaque medium. And so again, it's what you prefer. If you have the money and you want to buy the very best, so you go and buy rag paper. And most serious artists will buy better paper. And when I do a commission piece, I will buy better paper. But in the classroom, when I rip off page after page, I'm demonstrating or doing something, I use a student grade. And sometimes I have fun with other papers. And I encourage my students to use different papers. So you start out with your primary colors and a couple of brushes and any kind of watercolor paper. And then the next trip to the store, when you know a little bit more already and you've tried a few things, and you feel a paper. That's another thing. touch it.
Yes.
I want to paint on this. So you buy yourself a couple of sheets or a block or a pad, and you use it. And now they have sample paper pads where you have hot pressed, cold pressed, rough.
All in one pad.
All in one pad. So, and I go through these pads like that because I have so much fun with them. But then and as you grow in your painting, the more you understand and the more confident you are, you also begin to see, gee, this works better for me. So in the end, you wind up with the paper, you experiment again. What suits me best? Which brush does for me what I want it to do?
That's true. And I think if you look at painters throughout history, they've painted on cardboard, paper, wood, fences along the street. I mean, everything. So, you know, whether you have the resources at hand or not, or if you've just run out of your best paper, you know, get out there and just paint them, whatever you have. And, you know, the process of it is what's important and how you feel about it. And getting to just paint, you know, that's the freedom of it all, is your expression.
And speaking of different things, I was most impressed. I was in Boston for some medical reasons, but we went to see the Picasso exhibit, which were his drawings. And they're small, and they're on napkins, no paper, any kind of paper. I'm not that fond of Picasso's work, but his drawings were out of this world. But I was surprised how tiny, and anything that was handy. And then, of course, you know, people who know it all, the elitists.
Right.
We have them in watercolor especially.
As well, right.
You have to do everything correct. You have to have the best paper because, and it has to be acid-free because it's going to keep forever. Well, all these things that artists through history have used have stood up pretty well.
Yes, they have.
And when somebody asks me, I'm really bad, I say, well, if it lasts 100 years, I'll be satisfied, you know?
Yes, 100 years might be long enough to satisfy you with the painting. Why don't you show us a couple of your paintings? They're so numerous and beautiful.
Well, I will show you just a couple of framed ones that I brought.
Oh, that's splendid.
And here is one of daffodils.
Oh, that's gorgeous.
And this sort of has a little broken up technique.
Wow. That's one thing I've always liked about your work, or one of the things I admire, is how you take pieces of color here and you've made a whole entire background, not using representational painting, but giving it the form and certainly clearly giving the feeling of the daffodils growing in your garden.
And I did a lot of daffodils. That's another thing, is if I do a subject, I do a lot of different takes on it. Now I put this right on there.
Okay.
And because I love color, I like playing with color.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And I also like to utilize the negative space within here. Oh, I think I might have to hold it this way a little bit. Okay. I don't know if it reflects on the glass too much, but and I have another made to go with this one.
Wow.
And this was just a fun idea I had one day, and I do like just using different colors and letting the colors run. Let me put that away.
Do you like to paint outdoors or indoors?
Yes, I do. And here's a little tiny, tiny winter landscape.
Yes.
I enjoy both. I can paint anywhere, and occasionally somebody will say to me, oh, I want to come and see your studio. I says, well, you're always welcome at my house. I painted my kitchen counter, or on the back porch or something, or, you know, on the patio or something. But outdoors, we like to fish. We go trout fishing, and when my family or my husband and I would go trout fishing, I bring my art supplies, and I just sit there at the side of the creek and I paint.
Oh, okay.
And it's fun.
I haven't been painting outside yet. That's my summer with you. I think then in July we're going to be painting outside.
One of my favorite paintings, I chased down the beach at Chokin Reservoir. It was a windy morning and it got away from me, but it didn't wind up in the water.
Oh, wow.
But things like that. But sometimes the adverse conditions outside, you paint faster. That's another thing. You don't have to belabor a piece. You can put capture something within a few brush strokes, and sometimes it makes for a better watercolor.
Oh, okay.
It does.
Or you might even just get the impressions down on the paper while you're outside, and would you take it back indoors and fine-tune it?
Yes, sometimes. Also, like field studies are for that purpose. You do a quick rough, and then sometimes you make notes, or a lot of it is by recall, and then you come back and you sit down and you know, do another piece of it.
Oh, okay.
And it's amazing to see the rough and the finished painting. And many times the rough is nicer because it's more spontaneous. It's you know, freer. It's again, when you really belabor something like watercolor, you stiffen it up or overwork it, and it loses its beauty. It's a strange thing with watercolor. You have to know when to stop.
Now, in your notebooks that you have with you, do you have some more of your paintings?
I brought notebooks, and I brought a couple of series. This book I think you're familiar with.
Is that the one that was on the display at the Chatham Fair?
But I added a few more of the color mixing things.
These are beautiful.
Yeah. And I have fun. I could make like very serious color charts, but I just, whether it's balloons or...
So it looks like what you've done is use the image of balloons, but to use it as a color wheel or color sampler for mixing the colors. But rather than to just do circles and lines, you've incorporated into either leaf patterns or the heart patterns.
And each time, I'll start maybe with the yellow, and then each time I add a little more red, and then into the red I start adding blue, and then here we mix the yellow with the blue to get the greens, and then you can also see the beautiful darks, blacks, browns, grays, and natural colors you can mix yourself. And none of this is black. This is, even this very dark over here, the dark brown and the one that looks black is mixed from the primary colors. And visually it looks black, but when you look at it, it has sparkle in it, color.
And all your color mixing samplers are paintings. I mean, they just look so free and beautiful.
And then occasionally I get a little geometric.
Okay.
And here we do have circles. And lots of times I just let it all run together, but that's the way I do it.
This book that Regine's showing us is a sampler of the process of her painting course. So it goes through mixing colors, to the brush strokes, to negative images.
Yeah, this was specifically put together for the college to show at the Chatham Fair to give people an idea what we cover in my classes. And here's a vase with a dark background with a light background. And here's some more color things. And here is some using, this was interesting. Here I used the new primary colors, the Hansa yellow and the cyan, and I'm trying to think what other color. But they used the green, the purple, like they use in computers and they use in photography.
Oh, I haven't seen those. Oh, that's interesting.
Yes, a friend of mine who's a school teacher, she said to me, "Oh, we don't use blue, yellow, and red anymore. No, we're using these." So, okay. And this piece was done with these primary colors.
And then there's your negative space, utilizing the white that's already there, so we don't paint with white. We
do not use, and here are some just...
this was interesting too, the value studies.
The values and monochromatic, where you have dark to light. And in the orange it's already less defined, and if you do it in yellow it's even less. Oh, wow. And sometimes I leave the white of the paper, makes wonderful snow. And here are some brush strokes and mixing greens, and you see all the vibrant colors in the greens, which gives it sparkle in the painting. And more brush strokes and shapes of flowers.
Well, going through this process, I know, meant a lot to me, and I remember sitting next to a student who hadn't painted at all before, and through your process of teaching, she was painting after.
Isn't it amazing?
By the end of the class, she
4 or 6
allowed
weeks
herself to paint. She was just very concerned with mixing her colors, you know, hour after hour, and by the last class she was really free. And I think by going through this process with the brush strokes and mixing the colors and value painting, you really get a good foundation on what watercolor painting is about.
And any craft, and I consider painting a craft, and all crafts are art and art is craft, it's by rote. By the process you can go step by step, and I'm always amazed, 4 weeks, 6 weeks in my classroom, people can go home and never come back. And they can pursue it on their own, or I also encourage students to take classes with another instructor. Maybe they can pick up something else from someone else. Here it's kind of interesting how I just left the white of the paper and then I did like a glaze or a wash over it, and the colors underneath shine through, but it alters it ever so little.
Wow. What advice do you have for people who want to paint, for beginners? Someone who's always had it in them, they really want to be out there painting but haven't taken that first step.
If you're interested, like, in my classroom, the first night I say, what brought you here?
Yes.
The desire, and then just do it. Even when you doodle, you're making art. You really are. Sometimes on your phone you're just doing little things. Some of us make smiley faces, but some of us do some beautiful doodles, and they're drawings. And here I sort of explain the shapes and the dimensions.
Regine, we just have a couple of minutes left. Is there a place where people could contact you, or want to let them know about where you're teaching or what's coming up next for your painting future?
Well, I teach at Columbia Green Community College, and you can reach the college at 518-828-4181. And just tell people you want to take my class.
That's right.
Sign up. You can reach me at home if you like, and I do have a card. Would that be easier?
Oh, you can give the phone number right now.
Oh, I can give you the phone number.
Audience.
I live in Catskill, and my home phone number is 518-945-1104. My name is Regine Petrosky, and I'd be happy to answer your questions or encourage you in any way I can. Occasionally, I also do private lessons.
Oh, you do as
well?
Yes, oh, that's
occasionally.
Super. Okay.
But I prefer teaching at the college or through an art program. I do a program in Catskill through the Catskill Mountain Housing for seniors. I do it at their site, and we really had a ball. This is my 3rd year.
Good.
So
and
it's
I
wonderful.
Hope, we all get to see some more of your paintings in your next shows and future shows. We're going to be looking for you. So thank you very much for coming out here today and sharing a little bit about yourself. And I hope you enjoyed the show.